Who's that?
Good morning.
Hey,
Morning,
morning.
Mayor.
Good morning.
Michelle. Ask her what that is and then close it. All right. Good morning, everyone. It's 10 a.m. Hope everyone's well. We'll call our Georgetown Scott County Revenue Commission meeting for Wednesday, December 13th to order. Let the record reflect that Gina Amos is present as a proxy for Superintendent Billy Parker. And then Mayor Bernie Jenkins is in attendance, and myself, Joe Pat Covington, as well. Hope everybody's well. We will move on to our first agenda item, which is approval of minutes from our last meeting, 11/8/23. Any questions or comments related to those minutes as presented?
So moved, minutes be approved.
We have a motion.
I'll second that, please.
We have a second. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. We'll move to old business number 4, and I will turn that over to Scott Hall.
Thank you, Judge. First item here is what we had titled Directors and Officers Coverage. We talked about that at a prior meeting and did want us to pursue that. We do have a quote on that. Let me pull up that information. Bear with me here. Okay, what I attached to the email yesterday was a 20-page insurance document, which is somewhat migraine inducing. I'm going to try to boil it down here for you as best we can. This is an email from the KLC Insurance Group, which is who our broker, Lewis Wolf at Craig and Hall, went with. Couple of things here. First of all, it's not called directors and officers, it's called PO. So when you see, I'm assuming you can see my arrow there, PO, that's public officials, same thing, tomato, tomato. And also KLC will not write just the PO by itself. It has to be bundled with the general liability policy as well. So that's why you see a GL plus a PO and then a total here. The prorated premium quote column, these are would take us from 12/13 today through 7/1, so it's just a 6-month, and then you see the annualized premium. All they're requesting would be the first 6 months right now to get this policy in place, these policies in place today. Also, our current Liberty Mutual business owners policy is a bundle in and of itself, which is the general liability and property, which includes contents. And that annual premium was recently paid. We were invoiced for that and recently paid it. So as the Liberty Mutual and KLC policies and premiums are comparable, our broker recommends the following, that once we make our decision on the limits that we want, that we cancel the business owner's policy with Liberty Mutual with, of course, a refund to follow, and that we go with the public officials rates here, the general liability, and he also recommend that we move our property. That's why you see down here it says plus property policy, move the contents over to this So all three of those would be with KLC. We would retain our Liberty Mutual policy on our fleet vehicle. And then, of course, we have our separate traveler's policy for cybersecurity insurance. So I know that's a lot of ifs, ands, or buts. The property policy would be another $355 for 6 months, annualized $647. But I think I've summarized it in a way that may be helpful. So to do what the broker suggests, to go with the public officials, general liability, and property are contents. $2 million is what we're required to have by our lease with GMWSS. So that's why you have the $2 million option. If we went with the $3 million option, it raises it just a little bit, about a little less than $200 annually. If we wanted to get an additional $3 million of coverage, take it up to $5 million, that's only going to raise our annual premium by another $437. So at this point, whatever you decide, I will get with Lewis, fill out a form so we get covered today. Obviously, we would want this coverage in place before we cancel the Liberty Mutual, but the decision will be made whether or not you want to go with the minimum $2 million that's required by our water company lease, or if you want to bump up to the 3 or the 5 million.
Sounds like to me that, you know, the cost difference, the 3 million would be a very appropriate level of coverage, and you know, I would ask for any input from anyone else on the call if they feel differently.
First, Scott, I don't see what you're looking at. I'm still looking at the agenda, so I'm not able to see what you're looking at. So
Can everybody else see it?
No, I'm just looking at the attachment you had sent earlier is where I was seeing it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's what I had pulled up as well.
Mhm.
It's not on the
Yeah.
screen share.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I think that 3 million is very appropriate too.
yeah, I don't have a
I
problem.
think-
Yeah,
Yeah,
don't
I
have a
think the
problem.
chances, the liability issues are so minimal here that that's more than sufficient.
Right.
When we were first looking at it, Scott and I were talking, and I looked up and I couldn't find a single instance where there had ever been any liability that was incurred by an acting agency like ours in our state. So I think that that's ample coverage for the need that we have.
I agree. I make a motion that we take the 3 million.
I second that motion.
Very good. We have a motion. We have a second. Any other questions? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you all. Scott, do you want to continue that conversation with the compliance efforts?
Yes. Can you all see the agenda again now?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. We've got an update here. Our compliance efforts, we have initiated the waiver window, and that has led to a lot of phone calls and walk-ins and a lot of people with bad addresses, some of those notices coming back. But we have had a significant response. We're actually, frankly, a little bit overwhelmed at this point. And we've actually reached out to Robert Half, and for the last 3 weeks, we've had some temp help as well. But Jessica, anything else you want to add to that in terms of
Yeah.
the workflow?
Yeah, so I would just add that just so that you all know, I mean, we had talked about the approximately 50% of the accounts, which is roughly, just really roughly 4,500 not having filed the 2022 return. So out of that roughly 4,500, we sent a blanket 2,800 a notice that just said, hey, we haven't gotten your 2022. There's a waiver window in place. Please send it in. As Scott said, that project became much bigger, both because what it required to do in our current system is basically a file review that I did over the course of 2 weeks of all 9,000 of those accounts, which led to me sort of having to go through the accounts, which was good. Roughly 1,000 new accounts came in to my office for a legal referral to begin legal processing because of the age and the just various issues. So over the past 3 weeks, that's pretty much exclusively what I've been doing. Of those 1,000, I've probably been able to process 600 to 700 so far in terms of the legal collection side of things. So I've been slowly working through the 8 file banker boxes that came back to my office, and I'm down to 2. So from that project of wanting that letter, a lot of work has ballooned from it. But the good thing is that we've also put into place with our developers some long-term solutions, including we're working on automating the compliance status based on expiration date, which will be amazing because that would allow us to essentially have real-time delinquency rates for us and for you if you should want them, so that when certain marks are missed, the status is automatically update to delinquent rather than being based on a manual process. So that's come from this project. And another thing that has come from this project is that we are beginning to look at how can we break down these delinquency numbers on a more regular interval basis, whether that's a weekly or monthly or quarterly. So a lot of good has come from it, but it has kind of created a swell in terms of what we're doing in our processes. And specifically for a lot of the files have come to me, which is great because it's led to a lot of resolutions, a lot of account closures for businesses that have closed. So that will be reflected in the numbers that Scott, he probably won't, I don't think it's for this month, but next month you'll probably see a very big swell in closures. And all of that is a result of us going through that list for the penalty waiver window letter. So just so that you know, some of those things are still ongoing. Finally, one more note is that in our system, previously, we couldn't track a penalty and interest abatement or waiver. Like we couldn't tell you how much a program led, how much abatement resulted from that. So one of the things that I brought to the developer was that during these times when the commissioners have approved some type of waiver, we would love to be able to track what kind of benefit that was for taxpayers so that we can have that data. So we've also requested that they begin to build out that module. So in the future, when you all have issued some type of penalty waiver or abatement program, we would be able to come to you and say, hey, during that window, this is how much penalty and interest were abated so that you can see that benefit. So those are 2 long-term results that will come from this project, which I think are important. And so that's just some additional information on that project that started with a simple letter and kind of has swelled to be more of a comprehensive file review. And once all of this work is done, I plan to run those compliance numbers again for the jurisdiction so that you all can have that data.
Yeah, that's the only thing I would add. And once the dust settles and this finishes, we'll definitely do a postmortem and bring it back to the commissioners so we can kind of tell you what the costs involved were in terms of additional postage, printing, things of that nature, as well as the resolution to some of these many of these accounts. So
Appreciate that update.
Any other questions on that?
No, appreciate the update. And the only 2 things that stand out in my head is just coordination with county offices on, related to the administrative hold, functions, about just a clear communication about, really a flow chart of what needs to be done. We haven't done that yet, to my understanding. Is that correct, Jessica?
Correct. So the last that we kind of spoke during our last meeting, that was going to be something that I worked with Devin and Cam on. And to be completely honest, this project became it largely, I reviewed those 9,000 accounts and I had to pull, all of that stuff. So that's pretty much consumed all of my time, stop, since the last meeting.
You don't have to say another word. I was just trying to
but
wrap around.
That's definitely what we plan to do. We plan to create some systems. Devin has reached out and asked me for a couple of things related to city compliance. So some prompts, a roadmap, as well as some signage for those offices. And that is as soon as I get done with this chunk of this letter process, I plan to do that. That's the very next step, which kind of this summarizes the next the next item on that old business, not to overstep, Scott, but the IRS letter ruling is also in that. We kind of deprioritized that as this sort of swelled to become what it was. So as soon as I'm not surrounded by these file boxes, I plan to pick that back up, and I will definitely reach out to Devin and to Cam and get those things going, because I know that's our next step for that.
No, it sounds like like just we'll circle back after Christmas and
Yeah.
try to wrap our head around that. And I appreciate that. Are there any other questions from any revenue commissioner member or anyone else for that matter
No.
related to those ongoing efforts?
Seems like to me that it's really keeping you all busy, and that may be something where we may have to look at providing them some help with when things like this happen, and it causes them to their work effort has to grow up a little bit because of all this new compliance we're asking them to do. We may have to looking down the road of providing them some help with that. Somebody that can be geared to take some of the load off Jessica and Scott, so that person can help out with that. That's just a thought.
Yes,
Something
man.
to consider.
That's why we reached out to Robert Half. We've had a good relationship with them. In fact, we converted over someone we used. We had someone go out on medical leave a couple of years ago for an extended period of time, and that gentleman, John Higgins, is now with us full time as a full employee. So we have a great relationship with Robert Half in Lexington, and we've actually, the first person didn't quite work out, so we're on our second person, which is common with attempts, but we can always pull that in pretty quick order and get somebody in here to help us, at least short term. So
Good.
And as far as the private letter ruling, yeah, no movement on that for all the reasons Jessica just stated. And I told Jessica it's something that's we've waited 19 years, we can wait a little longer. So we'll pursue that further on down the line. Before I get to the last item, lockbox here I did get an email from Lewis going back to the $3 million quote you approved here. That coverage also includes not only Jessica and I, but everybody that works at the Revenue Commission. That's just how KLC writes that policy. So you're getting the public officials coverage, but all of us would be covered under that as well. So lockbox. Unfortunately, that is currently on hold. We had a very bad experience at our third training session with the bank. Essentially what has happened is we've sent them 20 pieces of mail, and after 3 training sessions with them, they can't seem to get it right. And in particular, the third session that happened, we had one particular employee with the bank that was very unprofessional, not only in not helping us, but in demeanor and how we were treated. So after that, I escalated to one of the executives that Jessica and I had worked with when we were finalizing this, and he was obviously horrified and apologized. And we will, after the first of the year, we're going to regroup and try to start anew with a new team. Also, in the interim, I reached out to my colleague at Louisville Metro because they've been using them for 5 years, and she also facilitated where we also met with Dina Soyano, who is the manager of the IT. They have their own in-house IT at the Revenue Commission in Louisville, and Jessica and Tammy and I had a conference call with her last week, and she said that's not been their experience. They have really good relationship with them. In fact, they just had a crew up there a few weeks ago, the same week that this happened, because there's always changes going on. They're not perfect, but they're really good to work with, and they've never had that experience. So we're hoping we just luck of the draw. We got a bad crew to start with here at first, but we're going to regroup and start anew in 2024. So a little bit of a hiccup there, but I wanted to keep you updated. Any questions on that?
Thanks for that update. Any other questions?
No.
We will move on then to number 5, refunds. Scott?
You all see that? Still seeing the agenda? Okay, hang on. Stand by. How about now?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, yes.
Okay, so this is a net profit request of $30,534 for tax year 2022. You can see the city, county, and school board splits there. Sorry, Mayor, the city kind of took it on the chin on this one. Essentially, what happened is when the taxpayer filed their extension request in April, they remitted a large overpayment with that. That's not uncommon. They won't, when they go to file, sometimes they'll pay it all again when they actually file the net profit return. But it was a large overpayment with their extension request, and they're located in the county. They should have never paid any city tax at all, so that's why that number is so much bigger than the others. But they also overshot the mark on the county and school board. So after a complete audit review of this particular refund, our staff recommendation is the commissioners approve this net profit refund of $30,534.89, which will be released today once it's approved. Any questions on that refund?
No,
I'll make a motion to approve that.
I'll second it. Even though it hurts, I'll second it.
That's why I went on and took it on the chin for you there, Mayor. So we have a motion, we have a second. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. That will move us down to KLC Quick Pay Review Discussion Request.
Yes. So back in just a little brief history here, back in 2021, KLC launched a pilot program with the city of Versailles, and they were offering to be a vendor service for credit cards, debit cards. They don't currently do e-checks, but they started that, and it grew like gangbusters. A lot of cities and even one county have actually taken advantage of this. When I was at the KLC conference in September, I had a demo there. They had a booth set up, and I was astounded because it's so much more than just credit cards. It's actually going to be like a website within a website, and we'll get to that here in just a second. But and when I was standing outside the booth in September, a couple of mayors approached me that I knew from the board, and they said, we did this and we've not regretted it. They said it was really good. They're good to work with, good customer service, and they're just able, some of these smaller cities are just able to offer online services they never thought they could on their own. And then as a result of that, I asked KLC Quick Pay, the folks, to come and do a demo for us, which they did in November. And I got to see it again. Jessica, Tammy, our senior auditor, and Pam, our office manager, also were in the demo. And in the interim between September and November, I sent them some of their forms. So the demo was customized using some of our actual forms. And Jessica, is it an overstatement to say y'all were blown away?
No, it definitely was a solution to a problem that we've been talking about, multiple solutions. So yeah, definitely it was very exciting to see the quality of work that they're doing. As you all know, I used to work at KLC, so the staff that they've got on there is doing an amazing job at solving a big problem for most cities and counties.
Yeah, so I just wanted to share with you some of the ad slicks. This talks about the website and how they maintain it. This young lady here was one of the 3 people that came and did the demo for us. This is some of the these are some of the services we would be getting. All of these forms, it's a workflow tool. There's going to be online forms which have calculations built into it, which means essentially they can't make a mistake, which will reduce the number of notices we have to send where people get arithmetic wrong. It removes another barrier to voluntary compliance. We know of at least one CPA in town who will probably file all of his stuff using this. So it's really, really an amazing tool. The price, hang on just a second here. So the Quick Pay, it's $6,588 a year, which is $549 a month, and they will become the credit card processor in addition to all these other forms and the managing of these forms and the workflow tools that come with it. That's another thing some of the mayors told me. It's just like, we were just hoping, some of these cities didn't even offer credit cards before this. So they were glad to have that as a payment option for, not just occupational tax, but property taxes and other licenses and fees. But this bundle of forms and everything that you can put online is just kind of a game changer for them. You can see the transaction fee is a flat 55 cents plus 2.69%. So it's whether it's a debit card, credit card, that's one of the things with the vendor we currently have that, hang on just a second here. This is who we currently have, and we will be keeping them because currently, if you decide to do this, if you approve this, because KLC QuickPay does not currently offer e-checks, and that's about 51% of the volume we get, and that's because of this flat $1.95 e-check fee. So whether you're paying us $10 or $10,000, it's $1.95 is the convenience fee. Whereas you can see here, if it's a business card, there's one rate. There's a debit card, there's this rate. If it's a credit card, there's this rate. There's just a one rate with KLC, and the flat fee is 55 cents. But the problem here, and where it's going to save some of our taxpayers some money, is this minimum fee of $3.95. So let's say, for example, a taxpayer is going to pay us $50. Well, when you multiply that by the 2.69% and add the 55 cents, that's $1.90. That's their convenience fee. For us, it's going to be a minimum $3.95 on that same $50 charge. So it will save some taxpayers some money on these charges. The 2.69% is obviously a little higher than this and significantly higher than this, but it's lower than this one. And this just causes a lot of confusion with the taxpayers when they're trying to figure out what's the most cost-effective way to do this. So what will happen is they'll go to our website to do online pay, and they'll be able to choose this one for e-check, and then they'll do the other one for the debits and credit cards. So, Jessica, anything else we need to add on to that?
I would just say, and you mentioned it, but one of the biggest benefits that I see, and I know that the staff is really excited to think about, is that we don't have the expertise in-house to make all of our forms as digitally friendly as we would like. I did go through and I taught myself how to make fillables on PDF because we knew that would help people to fill them out online and be able to submit them via email. But what this offers to me is it's a platform for the first step of going towards e-filing, so that in the future, if we decided to say anyone has a tax liability of X has to file online, or with a certain, as you all know, there's ordinance amendments going through with the city right now that they're considering where electronic filing would be required if an employer had over 100 employees. All of that is to alleviate some of the manual processing that's required on our end, which takes a lot of time. So the way that I see this sort of strategically is that it is the first step towards giving us a platform online where all of our forms are not only digital, but they can include calculations to reduce errors, and that reduces barriers for tax pro compliance, but it also buys and saves us time. So that's sort of the way that I see it. Is more, it's great that they can pay online and it's all that, but it also saves us so much on the front end that we now have to communicate through multiple letters, which takes time, costs postage. So I think long term, it's part of the strategy to kind of transition to a more digital filing process. I think it's a good first step, so that in the future, if we want to take one of those more robust steps about electronic filing, we then have a workable platform where they can get all those forms. So I think it's important to keep that in perspective too, that it's more of a step towards that direction, and it gives us that tool. And I would also just say another thing, that it creates, what happens when you file online with this system is that it generates an automatic email to whoever we assign that to. So it also gives us some built-in features for workflow, which will help us get speed behind the processing. And it will also direct those things to who they need to go to. Whereas now it comes in the mail, 3 people have to touch it before it gets assigned. And so it also gives us some of those digital workflow options that are really valuable and that I think could help save us time too.
Jessica and Scott, do you all recommend option A or option B?
It would be option A,
All right.
the website with the 15 forms. We can always add more forms later too. But yes, that's correct, Jessica. We would.
Yeah, so that will essentially digitize all of our forms where they can be fillable with calculations online, as well as those options for them to pay online, so that all of that is digital. So they don't have to upload, they don't have to do anything. They can completely fill it out digitally.
Will this integrate with the software you already have, your QuickBooks and all your other software, or no?
Well, one of the questions we presented them was if this could eventually result in a report that we could then empty and upload into FileMaker. And they said that they would be able to work with us to create a CSV report that would upload. So the hope is that eventually there will be a full transition of that to our database. Right now that doesn't exist, but we think that it very much could once we get it developed, and then we go to our database developer and say, hey, we need this report to upload into FileMaker. So it would be a bridge that has to be built, but they've told us that the possibility exists there.
And they have a robust team at KLC that's working on this, so we'd be able to leverage that as well.
Very good. Any questions for staff related to this recommendation of option A for the quick pay addendum, quick pay fee addendum? Any questions or comments, and would there be a motion?
Is
I
there
make that
an
motion.
is there
Go
an
ahead.
implementation fee with this too, or that's all included in that price?
It's all included in the price.
Okay, I second that motion.
We have a motion from Mayor Jenkins, a second from Gina. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes. That will move us down to our mid-year budget adjustment, review, discussion, request to accept. Questions? Scott, I'll turn it over to you.
Actually, there was one before that, Judge. Included with the KLC Quick Pay, I'm assuming you also approved it. We'll do a one-time special expense deposit. So since we're doing a one-time for the first year here, the flat fee, the auditors recommend that whenever it's something this large, like we did with the cameras recently and other large expenses in the future. So I don't know if that needs a secondary approval or if we just consider that approved within the KLC Quick Pay contract execution.
I'll defer to Jessica, but would think that the approval of the agreement and the 6588 expenditure. But Jessica, if you feel like we need another motion to approve the allocation, so to speak.
I don't think a separate motion is needed as long as we know that that amount was included in that first motion. So it can if somebody could perhaps make a new motion that includes that specific amount as a special payment to be made, I think that would cover us.
I make that motion.
I'll second that.
Very good. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? That motion passes. So now we'll skip on down to 8, and Scott has that on his screen shared.
All right. So the yellow areas are where there are changes. If we're going to go with the 3 million, I'll actually have to get that number from the final number from Lewis before I actually key it into here. But as we sit right now without that, this would be the increase. I'll go through each one here. What has happened basically since July. We did have an extra, after we cut Sturgill Turner loose, an extra invoice there for $282. We had already budgeted for the $10,000 to be replenished for future potential litigation. When we get into the audit here, I'm budgeting an extra $4,000 for bank reconciliation. That'll make more sense when we go through that. We did have one finding this year. This is what the additional expense would be if we carry. It would include the 3 weeks we've already had them, and would take us through the next 6 months through the end of June if we need to keep the temp that long. That's what that amount is for from Robert Half. We did have a few supplies here in conjunction with our AED. We do have an AED on site. These are a trauma bag, a biohazard kit, and some other supplies. Slight increase there. This would be same thing, since July and carry us through if we, our VoIP is in, we're in phase one implementation, but we're kind of stuck because we haven't had the numbers ported yet. This would be the expense, but we're not paying that monthly now because we don't have, the phones are on our desk, but we haven't officially converted over to our new VoIP system, and we're kind of at the mercy of the telecom providers on that. I bumped it up pretty heavily here for the postage increases for the waiver window notices, and I think we've had an additional postage increase since then as well. Small amounts here, $5 our news graphic subscription went up, our internet went up slightly, $6. We did have to replace a couple of weeks ago Jessica's Dell all-in-one. Now, I do want to tell you that we, unfortunately, with our managed service provider, VC3, they're doing that a lot differently now. And so we bought that computer. It was $1,450 from Amazon, because now they're going to mark it up. They would have charged us $2,000 plus the $704 to install it. So this is the $704 plus the cost. I found one brand new on Amazon for $1,450. And it came with a 3-year warranty, brand new. And also something else they've done is and we found this out the hard way, if we order something through them, there are no returns. No returns at all. And we can return anything on Amazon. So just that, we're going to be dealing with that a little bit differently now. And we saved ourselves quite a bit of money by buying the hardware ourselves. The business owner's premium, again, once I get the final confirmation, I'll execute the work order with Lewis here as soon as we finish, and I'll plug the numbers we talked about in here. KLC Quick Pay, I just wanted it on the agenda. If you approved it, there's not going to need to be anything put in there because we're going to do a special deposit on that outside of the normal monthly. I did finally get the invoice from Public Works, Robert Bruin, Mayor. Be sure and thank him and his crew. They did a great job pouring our concrete pad for our drop box. The materials was $215.27. And our automobile policy went up, premiums went up $481 over the next year. So that's the amount of increases. That's what the split would be there, and annualized what that looks like. Anybody and also on the footnotes tab here, as always, I update all these numbers. That's how I come up with those totals as I go back and add up each. For example, here, number 4 is all the software licenses. We have things of that nature. So that's there for you to review for the down and dirty and the detail that goes into these numbers that gets put in here. So that's all I have at this point on the mid-year budget adjustment. Any questions?
I have no questions. Appreciate the details and the additional information about the, to give background on the request. Anyone else have any questions?
No. Do we need to make a motion on this or anything?
Yeah, we'll need a motion to accept.
Then make a motion that we accept this.
I'll second that.
Any other questions? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. That will move us down to annual audit reports, fiscal year FY 6/30/23.
Yeah, so we did finalize our audit. So this is normally when we submit that information. It's a rather large document, plus the letter that comes with it. I sent it to soft copy to all 3 of you, as well as Gina, Michelle, and Stacy. They have soft copies as well. They always send me a few hard copies. If any of the commissioners want those, I'd be happy to pass them along. Gina, Michelle, and Stacy all said they just want the soft copies. But what I want to share with you here is this metric that we always pull from the audit reports as we reported based on our monthly reports. 53.5 million was our aggregate collections. This was our budget for the fiscal year that ended June 30th. So you divide those two and you get a 1.86%, which means our return on investment, it's usually above 98%. It's 98, actually 0.14. That's the return on investment. So for every dollar we collect for all 3 jurisdictions, 1.86 cents goes to cover all of our collections. So I like to share that with you. That's the good news. The somewhat bad news is we did have a finding this year related to bank recons. We're going to be making some changes. Can everybody see the findings there? You see the findings?
Yes.
From
Okay.
Miller, Mayer, and Sullivan and Stevens.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so this is the finding. I'll go through it here with you. It's the only finding we had regarding bank reconciliations. They were not properly reconciled to the general ledger during the year, and that is correct. The detail on this is that every month they should reconcile to the general ledger, which helps to ensure the records of the commission are accurately posted to those financial statements that can be prepared. Certain checks were issued after June 30th and after the bank reconciliation was prepared, but were recorded as being issued prior to June 30th. That was the misstatement. So the financial statements were actually misstated. That was uncovered in the audit. And then the recommendation is that the bank account should be reconciled and agreed to general ledger monthly. No changes should be made in QuickBooks to reconcile periods after reconciliation date. If necessary, wait until all checks related to that particular month have been issued before reconciling. Additionally, management should review the reconciliations and ensure that the beginning balance agrees to the prior month. So what essentially facilitated it is we had some escheatments, and this will be covered in our management response here. The bottom line is we did some escheatments where refund checks, we reached out to the taxpayers, they never responded, or they said they don't want the money from the check from a year ago. We escheat that money to the Kentucky Treasurer's Office, and then hopefully they will find that taxpayer someday, or the taxpayer will come looking for it, but it gets it off of our books. So our response was that we agree with the auditor's recommendation. In the past, the staff had been trained to perform bank reconciliations as soon as possible after receiving the bank statements. This was likely an overcompensation by management due to finding 2016-001. That was the finding that we got in the first audit I did when I came here in July 2016, where it was discovered that the bank recs had not been done for several months following the retirement of the former director. In and of itself, completing the bank recs as soon as possible at the beginning of the month is a good control. However, this becomes an issue when additional transactions were posted by mistake back to the reconciliation period after recon had been completed. This creates inaccurate cash balances at a later date. An additional factor is the end of the month transfer checks cannot be issued until after the first of the following month. So voided and escheated checks can also create timing differences, which is what happened in this case, if done after the bank recs are completed. So working with Miller, Mayer, Sullivan, and Stevens, and our QuickBooks advisor from Blue & Company in Lexington, we put together a corrective action plan. Number one, we've hired a third party to take over the bulk of the bank reconciliation process on a contract basis. This was a recommendation by the auditors. They felt like we'd grown to the point where that control step is something to put in, and that's the $4,000 that's in there. It's about going to be average between $300 or $400 a month for them to come in and do this once a month. Our QuickBooks advisor actually has someone on their team who began this in September. We've moved the bank reconciliation process to the middle of the month, so we're not trying to get it done as soon as we get the bank statement. We've added a pre-reconciliation process. Number four, we created a monthly bank reconciliation review checklist to more clearly define the roles and controls in place as a result of this finding. Number five, the General Counsel Assistant Director, Jessica, will be cross-trained to fill in for both myself and Tammy, our senior auditor, in the bank reconciliation process. Once completed, the monthly bank reconciliation review checklist will be presented along with all applicable bank rec docs to the Revenue Commission Chair for final written approval. And then finally, all of those bank recs with the checklist will be presented annually when MMSS comes in for the audit. So, and you never like to see audits, but the auditor, the lead auditor, did give me a compliment. She said that's one of the best worded management responses she's ever seen. I look at these audits a little bit differently. Maybe it's because I'm a tax auditor by nature, but every time we have one of these audits, when they leave, we're a better organization for them being here, because while they usually don't result in findings, they usually have recommendations, and every year we're tightening up our processes a little bit more. So And I did want to share what the checklist looks like primarily for you, Judge, because you're going to be seeing this puppy when it comes through. So this is what we put together, and this will be on top of what you will get. We actually, because the audit wasn't final till November, and we didn't review this with our new bank person from Blue and Company. These will be added starting with the November that will be done this month. But you'll see everybody, what I do, Tammy and I do, what Blue and Company does, and then these first four are Tammy and then I. So I'm going to clean this up and create some lines for checklists, and then you will just judge when you review it, or if some commissioner in the future reviews it. You're not going to go back and reconcile our bank statement for the month. What you're going to do is just be sure that we followed all of these and that we said, yes, it does match back to the general ledger, things of that nature. So it's a good control. We're excited to get started with it. Actually, we have started. The Blue and Company person's been here since September, but that's the two big takeaways from the audit that just ended. The finding, as I've just described it, and the return on investment metric that I always present. And be happy to answer any questions, and I think this does, if there's no questions, we do need a motion to approve and accept the audit.
I'd make the comment that, that this is, just evidence that, even though there was a finding, it's still evidence that, there are significant professional measures put in place that assure that, good procedures are followed and policies being followed. And I appreciate your all's details and efforts to do so. So any other questions or comments?
Gina, I'd like to get your perspective on this.
Well, I think somebody checking it over is always good too. And another set of eyes, it just kind of protects, as long as more than one person's looking at it, it protects everybody. Yeah. And separating it out is what we do here too. Not one person has whole control over everything. We break it down into 4 people. And I know it's kind of harder when you got a smaller staff, but yeah, that's a good internal control too. Yeah.
Yeah. And in talking with the lead auditor against it, this is just a growing pain, is how she worded it. So.
Mm-hmm.
Very good. Would there be a motion to accept the audit as presented?
I'll make a motion to accept the audit as presented.
Second.
Second. Any other questions, comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. That moves us down to general discussion. Scott?
All right, let's pull this up. So no new projects were approved. Let me pull that up. I did run the report from the Cabinet for Economic Development, and the May 31st project, which was just the KJRA renewal, is still the only thing on there for Scott County. Let's go back. We do have, because we met earlier last month, I do have the September and October from our largest employer, the KJRA. Looking for it. Hang on here. I know it's here. There it is. Okay, so here is the September. Again, it's a static number. Every month it's the same. And then this is the October. These payments have been made. We're getting close to the cap here for the year, so we'll make another payment. We made another payment in November. We'll make one in December and then one in January, and then they'll hit the cap, and then there'll be no payments in February and March. So unless anybody has any questions, we'll move on from that one to, let's go back here. Everybody see the monthly stats here?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So October, we were up about 5.7% in aggregate collections. You can see the city was up a little over 10, county was up a little less than 2%, and the school board almost 6%. So that was October. Again, we're playing a little bit of catch up here. Here's November. We were up even more. We were up about 17% for our collections, about 16.8 city, 17.6 county, and almost 14% for the school board. And then the one we always like to see is the quarterly. And let's pull this up for you. So with the October and November collections in there, we still have December to go here, obviously, but we're already up 845,000 for this quarter. We were up 3.3 million, which we currently sit at an increase of 4.2 million over last year, with almost half this fiscal year done. And again, last year was a record year. We were up 5 million over the year before, 53.5 million. Right now we're running 4.2 million ahead of that. The city's 1.8 million up in collections, county 1.6, and the school board, we got to move with 775,000. So a good first half shaping up here, and next month we'll have the December, and you'll have a good solid picture on what the collections are looking like with half the fiscal year over. I beg your indulgence here. These numbers are still not right. I think what these are what we actually distributed to you come from internal spreadsheets that we have, and I think we have an Excel compatibility error or something going on. The formulas are not working the way they are. So this is the same numbers that were reported last month. This is incorrect as far as the distribution, but we're working to get that fixed. But these numbers are correct. $4.2 million overall increase in collections with the first 5 months of this fiscal year in the books. So any questions on that?
That is very encouraging data that helps support services that are needed to be provided and helps that bottom line. That's absolutely good news.
Yep,
Any
we're
other
off
comments?
to a healthy start here.
Good.
Okay. Okay, so that takes us to new and closed accounts. Again, we're playing catch up. See the October and the November numbers where we currently sit, 1,337 new accounts. We've already beat last year, and we still have to put in December's numbers. Last year, at this time, we were at 1,127. At the end of December, we had 1,199 new accounts opened at the Revenue Commission. We've already beaten that here at the end of November, so we'll be adding to that as well. As Jessica mentioned, some of the closed numbers will be getting larger in the coming months, but again, another record broken. We're gonna probably be somewhere in the 1,400 range after the December numbers are in. So the number of new business accounts being set up continues to increase.
Good news.
All right, if there's no questions on that, I think that takes us to our next regularly scheduled meeting, since the holidays will be over. We're back on our fourth Wednesday, which will be the 24th at 10 a.m.
And we'll have the 24th on the 24th. In 24, I should say. I'm
Yes.
sorry.
Mhm.
Very good. There's no other questions or comments. And I'm sure we'll speak before then, but it's Merry Christmas to all, and appreciate all you do. Is there a motion to adjourn, or should we just adjourn with our exit button?
Happy holidays, everybody. Look
Same
forward
to you
to
all.
Thank
All right.
next
you.
year.
Thanks,
you.
everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you.